everyone, and welcome back to European Stories from a Union of Volunteers. Today's episode is slightly different because I won't be interviewing a volunteer, but instead an ESC coordinator from North Macedonia. She became part of the ESC family almost 10 years ago when she did a short-term project in Bulgaria. Then she went on a long-term project to Slovakia, where she volunteered with the association Mladinstvo Slovensko, where she's currently now working. She is responsible for sending and hosting volunteers and has been doing so for 5 years already. Diana Dimitrescu, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for your invitation to be part from your podcast.
It's nice having you. Okay, so first question, how you've been working with the volunteers for quite a while already, but how did you first become interested in ESC or find out about the EVS at the time, European Volunteer Service, and now ESC? And how did you become interested in youth work?
So my journey started in 2012, when I was at the university and I had to do some voluntary work, and I became interested where I could spend my volunteering hours. And I found this opportunity at that time was called European Volunteer Service. And I applied for a short-term project. I spent 2 months in Bulgaria when I was working on eco project with 12 more volunteers. I really enjoyed being part of international community. I really liked the aim of the project and the interaction with youth. And this was the main step for me when that led me further to new opportunities. So later on in 2015, I joined another project, European Voluntary Service as well, but long-term this time, in organization called Mladinstvo Slovensko, as you mentioned. And after finishing with my project at that time, I stayed and I became full-time employee. At the moment, I'm the ambassador of the volunteering of the program European Solidarity Corps. I'm meeting young people. I'm talking about the benefits of the program, and at the same time, I'm their contact person if they would like to volunteer abroad.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So if any volunteer in Slovakia is having trouble, they can contact you, or just the people from Mladinstvo Slovensko?
Everyone actually can contact me. We are working with the young people from the whole country, and especially we are interested to help people that are coming from the difficult geographical and economical condition with this country. And also, since I'm coming from North Macedonia, I'm also helping to the youth there. So I'm connecting them with the Macedonian organizations that can help them to travel and volunteer.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And you were talking about that you like this feeling about being in an international environment. Do you feel that now that you contact with so many volunteers on a daily basis, that you have achieved that?
Yes, because I have this feeling that when I'm working with international people, that each day is a different story, and each day is bringing some different excitement. Because coming from different background, different culture, coming with different values, everyone can bring something interesting on the table. Sometimes, it can be really challenging because we are behaving differently that we expect, but everything is just a big learning process. And with this, with all this time that I am working with young people, I learned to really benefit from their diversity and to use that as an advantage.
I would also like to ask you, how was it stepping from being a volunteer in that association to then working full-time in the same association? Was it any different? How did you feel when it became a job?
So I would like to compare this position as being parent and child, because when I was a volunteer, I was the child within the organization, and my coordinator was in charge of my well-being. But when I switched to full-time employee, I was the one who was having the whole responsibility for the well-being of the volunteers. So definitely I felt more responsible, and let's say, if I can put it in that words, that the pressure was a little bit bigger because, as we said, people are coming from different backgrounds with different needs, and occasionally some of the volunteers can be homesick or might have need of mentoring or coaching. So when some person is in a position of volunteers coordinator, should be prepared to be a friend, to be a psychologist, to be a mentor, and to be the biggest support. So this was the main difference that I would like to highlight here.
Nice. But like, how does your daily work look like in terms of supporting the local volunteers and also sending volunteers? How does it work? What are like your main daily tasks that you would tell our listeners? Like, if anyone is interested in this type of work, how would you describe it?
So at the moment, I'm working purely as a sending coordinator, but I have been working in the past and as hosting coordinator. So I had these both roles. And when I was also coordinating the volunteers in our organization, mainly my tasks were to create tasks for them so that they can help us in our daily work. And I was mainly in touch with other organizations and schools where we were going with the volunteers, and we were organizing programs where we were introducing all the opportunities from Erasmus Plus program and European Solidarity Corps. We were presenting them, but as a sending coordinator, now I'm in charge of promotion of different European Solidarity Corps projects, mainly that are coming from our partners abroad. And also I'm in charge of preparing all administration that is needed for these projects. And also I'm in charge of organizing pre-departure meetings, discussing with all the potential volunteers that are interested in this activity.
And what is the thing that you like the most in this? Like, what is the thing that makes you remember the reason why you're doing it?
Yes. So what I really like the most about this work is the feedback from the volunteers once they return from their project. So usually we have really non-formal relationship with our volunteers, and we are connected on social media channels. And I'm usually following their comments or their activities while they're doing their project, and I'm really happy when I see their excitement from the project, or there are people that are coming after the projects, and they're so thankful for this opportunity. They are telling me how life-changing this was for them. So this is one of the most enriching experience for me, and totally like the ultimate happiness from this work is when I see that some of the volunteers, when they return back from the project, they are starting their own organizations in their home countries, and as well they are also helping back to their community here. So yes, I would say that these few points are the reason why I'm doing this job.
Yeah, it's quite a lot actually. Like you have more impact than one might think. Like you do change people's lives, even if it's just like in a small way. But like you give them the opportunity to go abroad and to live this life-changing experience. Because for me, it was life-changing. For you, it was life-changing. And yeah, it's very, very, very cool what you're doing.
I don't think that I'm changing their lives, but I'm just providing them the information that is changing their lives. So yes, I will put it this way.
But maybe if you weren't there, it would be more difficult for them to take this role or take this opportunity. So you definitely help in the process, I guess. Then, like the volunteers come from, as you mentioned, from different backgrounds, and even the volunteers you send, they go to different places. How do you adapt to each person individually? How do you, like you mentioned, like you also you need to be a parent or a psychologist. How does it work?
So at the very beginning, when we host some volunteer, we really spend and dedicate a lot of time in having conversations with them. We are calling them kind of one-to-one meetings, or even though we are having non-formal conversations when we are meeting outside of the office for a coffee or for a walk, and we are trying to understand that person better. We are discussing also personal issues. We are discussing about the background of that volunteer and, of course, his or her aspiration for future. So based on this information that we are receiving from them, we can then better adjust their development plan, and also we can understand their behavior later on in some certain situation. Because we noticed that we can't treat, or we can't approach each volunteer in the same way, because each person has different methods how can be motivated, and each person have different traits and weaknesses. So because of that, I will define our approach like really individual, from volunteer to volunteer.
What about the volunteers that go abroad? Like, for them, would you have any recommendation in like the application process when maybe they are unsure which project to apply for, and the application process itself, like motivation letter? What would be like your main considerations for someone who's struggling with this?
So I would advise each volunteer or potential volunteer that would like to do his or her volunteering abroad to, in the first place, to make self-assessment and to understand what they really like and what they're passionate about. Because during their project, if they don't work something that is giving them reason to wake up in the morning, then it will be only a lost time for them and for the organization. And when they define the field in which they would like to help and to develop at the same time, they can really easily find their project on the European Solidarity Corps side. The application process is not that hard, because they just have to prepare CV, and in the motivation letter, I would recommend that they really have to be themselves. And to present themselves with their strengths and weaknesses, because the organizations need to know this. And of course, they are not going to be rejected because of their weaknesses, but the organization can help them how to work on them and to improve them. So my recommendation is to be really open-minded, to be honest, and if they need help with writing the motivation letter, there are a lot of tutorials on YouTube. Also, we had prepared one in English language. So yes, there are a lot of tools that the potential volunteers can use so they can prepare their perfect motivation letter. And what we really appreciate within our organization is when someone is thinking out of the box, and for example, they are self-initiators and they are sending, for example, some videos instead of motivation letter, or some drawings, or some short graphics. So this is something that will make them to stand out of the crowd, let's say, and that is taking our attention within the selection process.
Yeah, that's really cool. And like, if also, I guess it depends on the project you're applying for. But if you're applying for like more of a designer volunteering project or something more creative, then maybe a motivation letter is, well, what's required, but at the same time is not so reflective of yourself and what you want to do in the project. So it's also like good for volunteers to show, as you were saying, who they really are. And I would also like to mention, like, for those who are struggling, this is not a job recruitment process. So like, they just want people to experience and volunteer and live a new experience, basically an international experience, while doing some cool solidarity project, I guess. So don't overstress.
Yes, but I would also here recommend to also not use one motivational letter for each project.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that before applying to some organization, please spend some time to read on organization website what they are doing, and if you can find yourself into some of their activities, and yes, please try to customize each motivational letter before applying.
Yeah, definitely. And now a more personal question. If you were granted any amount of funds from the European Commission for a youth project, what project would you like to implement? Doesn't matter where it is, but like what type of project? How would you use the money?
What I noticed also in my home country and here that youth people are living in rural environment, they don't have the same opportunities as youth living in the cities. And I would definitely open one youth center in each village, in each small village that will be kind of an info center or a space for youth where they can gather and have the same workshops or the same discussions that are happening in the cities. Because I noticed that a lot of youth can't join some of the activities that we are organizing as well because they have a limited transportation or they don't have a finance to travel from the villages to the city. Yes, so I would really like to get closer to these people. Also, I'm really motivated to say this because I was in a similar situation when I was younger. So I was quite lucky to meet someone that told me more about this project. So it's like now my life mission to go further and just to share the message and just return back what I have received in the past. So this is on what I'm going to spend my potential grant.
Yeah, that would be great. Maybe a little bit, if you are going to open in every village, maybe it will be a little bit expensive, but a good cause.
At the moment, I'm living in village as well, and I've started working on a development plan. And I was thinking, when there are 4 or 5 villages in this, actually the youth center can be in one village, and all the other people can come on bikes because there are very good connection between the villages. So I have my draft plan already.
Okay, let's go to the next segment. And imagine you're at dinner with some friends. And they are talking and asking you about what is it work with volunteers and volunteering, and what is the craziest story, experience you would tell our listeners that you've lived yourself as a volunteer or with other volunteers?
Yes, so my personal experience in 2 months in Bulgaria, we were really working hard from Monday till Friday noon, but afterwards we were hitchhiking through the whole country, and it was one of my craziest experience, I would say, because as a volunteer you don't receive a lot of money, but we managed just by promoting ourselves among the local people there that we are volunteers, that we are helping this country and this community. So the local people were giving us free transport, that they were giving us free local products. We were sleeping in their gardens. So this was really the best memories from that period. And I really learned that kind and good people are everywhere. And since that time, I'm really fearless because this adventure gave me a lot. And when I think about some crazy experience with my volunteers here that I hosted, I think that we had really different interesting combinations of volunteers in our office. They were coming from countries that have extremely different cultures, like, for example, a volunteer from Brazil and Turkish volunteers. So just having someone who has some kind of a different behavior, that someone who is very loud in temperament and someone who is really calm and have some strong religious values. It's also interesting experience. And I can, each time when I remember all these years when hosting volunteers, we are laughing a lot because we had a lot of laugh stories in our office. So also out of this, a lot of families were born.
Ah, really?
So yes, so even though we have some our let's say organization child, because people become so much close as a friends and as volunteers because they were spending time in the office and outside the office. So amongst us, some of them also love was born. So now we have their stories in our office that this is really a life-changing experience.
Exactly. Like, yeah, that's definitely life-changing.
And in Slovakia, it's really hard to get a visa for volunteers coming from third world countries. And we have really interesting stories while waiting in the police for foreigners and all these troubles that we had to go through. So
yeah, well, an adventure. Hitchhiking is definitely an experience that everyone should have. And for those who are volunteering at the moment, do so. And like even, well, be safe with Corona, but take advantage of being a volunteer because like even though we don't, like volunteers don't receive so much money, but we still do. But like when you say that you're a volunteer, everyone wants to help you. So yeah, take advantage of that, I guess. Are you ready to check out?
yes, I am.
Okay, so I have 3 checkout questions for you. First one, how would you describe youth work in one word?
Empowering.
What does solidarity mean to you?
Community.
What song represents volunteering and why?
I really like Everything is Awesome. It's from a Lego movie. And I think that all of my volunteers knows that I love this song and really reminds me of community, of helping. Is a really happy song. And yes, this is why I chose this song.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to this episode. Next week, we have another episode with Paula. And feel free to follow us on social media. We are on Instagram and Facebook at European Solidarity Network. You can also check Diana's song on our playlist. We leave the link in the show notes. And bye.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.